My name is Zoe. I'm 28 years old. And for our entire lives, my mother treated me like the embarrassing shadow to my twin sister's perfect light. I kept telling myself that if I just proved my worth, she would finally see me as an equal. But the moment that finally made the truth impossible to ignore came at my sister's baby shower. While handing out slices of cake, my mother physically blocked me from the main dining room and announced, "We only want successful women at this table." 41 guests stopped talking. The clinking of silverware died in an instant. My aunt lowered her champagne glass, her eyes darting uncomfortably to the floor. I paid the bills. They took the credit. I kept that house standing. They acted like I had never belonged in it. I thought my financial support meant I was finally part of the family. I was wrong. But my mother had no idea how expensive that smirk was about to become. She forgot I had paid $88,900 to save that very house from foreclosure. By the time I walked out and reached my car, the eviction notice I texted to every single guest was lighting up their screens, and my sister was already screaming at our mother. Before I go on, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story speaks to you. Drop your location and local time in the comments. My life has always been a game of musical chairs where my mother removes the seat the second I try to sit down. My twin sister, Chloe, is the sun. I'm just the person required to hold the umbrella so she doesn't get burned. I work 60 hours a week at a logistics firm. It's grueling, unglamorous work involving spreadsheets, shipping manifests, and a lot of caffeine. I don't mind the grind. The grind paid for my apartment, my car, and though they didn't know it yet, the very roof over my parents' heads. Chloe, on the other hand, lives in a world of soft edges and high expectations. She's currently pregnant, which, in my mother's eyes, has elevated her to the status of a living saint. Every conversation with my mother starts and ends with Chloe's cravings, Chloe's nursery themes, or Chloe's fatigue. "Zoe, you wouldn't understand," my mother told me 3 weeks ago while I was helping her scrub the baseboards in the hallway. "Chloe is building a legacy. You're just building a career. It's not the same kind of contribution." I didn't point out that I had paid for the cleaning supplies in her hand. I didn't remind her that I'd been the one to cover the property taxes that spring. I just kept scrubbing. That was my role. I was the silent foundation, the person who kept the walls upright while they focused on the wallpaper. My father is a shadow in his own home. He's a man who has mastered the art of looking at the floor. Whenever my mother snaps at me for not being supportive enough of Chloe's lifestyle, he suddenly finds a very interesting speck of dust on his shoes. He's not a mean man, but his silence is a heavy weight. He avoids conflict like it's a contagious disease, even if it means letting his daughter be treated like a seasonal employee. The family story they tell everyone is that I'm struggling. They say I'm finding my way or getting back on my feet. It's a useful lie. It explains why I'm always at work and why I don't have time for the country club lunches my mother adores. It also keeps me in my place. If I'm the one who needs help, I can never be the one who calls the shots. I was sitting in my office on a Tuesday evening, rubbing my temples when Elias walked in. Elias is 10 years older than me, a senior manager who's seen it all. He was the only person I trusted when the foreclosure notice arrived for my parents' house 6 months ago. He had sat with me for 3 nights straight, reviewing the paperwork and helping me navigate the bank's legal department. He set a fresh coffee on my desk. It was black, exactly how I need it when my head starts to swim. "You're still here," Elias said. It wasn't a question. "Just finishing the quarterly projections," I said, reaching for the cup. Elias leaned against the doorframe. He looked at the family photo on my desk, the one where I'm cropped half out of the frame at Chloe's engagement party. "Zoe," he said quietly, You can't buy respect from people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You've spent $88,000 trying to prove you belong. Look at that photo. Do you look like you belong? I didn't answer. I couldn't. The bank sees you as the owner, he continued. The city sees you as the taxpayer. When are you going to start seeing yourself as the person in charge? They're my family, Elias. They're your tenants, he replied. They just haven't realized it yet. He left before I could argue. That was the first time someone had said it out loud. It felt like a cold breeze in a room I'd been trapped in for years. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed on the desk. It was a text from my mother. Zoe, Chloe's baby shower venue just called. There was a pipe burst. They're canceling. Chloe is devastated. She's crying so hard her blood pressure is up. I found a replacement garden at the Botanical Center, but they need a $2,500 deposit by tonight. I told them you handle it. It's the least you can do since you didn't help with the invitations. Do this if you actually care about this family. I looked at the coffee Elias had left. I looked at the spreadsheets. I looked at the bank balance that was finally starting to recover after I'd saved their house. I was tired of being the shadow, but I wasn't ready to step into the light yet. I typed back a short, simple message. I'll send the deposit. I thought I was buying peace. I was actually just funding my own execution. The money for the Botanical Center deposit left my account within minutes. I didn't get a thank you text. I didn't even get a confirmation that the payment had been received. I only knew it worked because I saw my mother post a glowing update on Facebook an hour later. Saved the day. We've secured an even more beautiful garden for our Princess Chloe. Nothing stops this family when we pull together. She tagged Chloe. She tagged my father. She didn't tag me. The damage started to feel real 3 days later. I had been hoping that my $2,500 contribution would mean I'd be involved in the final walkthrough, or at least get a look at the catering menu I was also funding. Instead, I was ghosted. I called my mother on Friday morning. I was standing in the break room at work, watching the rain hit the window. Hey, Mom, I was just checking in about the shower. Do you need me there early to help set up the floral arrangements? There was a long pause. I could hear the clinking of china in the background. She was having lunch with her sisters. Oh, Zoe, we've actually moved things around. Chloe's mother-in-law is handling the decor now. It's a mother-daughter bonding thing, very delicate. I'm your daughter, Mom, I said. My voice was flatter than I intended. Of course you are, dear, but you're so busy with your logistics. We don't want to stress you out. Just make sure the catering balance is settled by Monday. I sent the invoice to your email. I opened my laptop. The invoice was for $4,200. It included a surcharge for premium organic appetizers that I hadn't approved. That evening, the digital invitations went out. I saw mine when it popped up in the family group chat. It was a beautiful design, soft watercolor peonies and gold foil lettering. At the bottom, it read, "Hosted with love by Martha and Chloe." My name wasn't there. Not as a host, not even as a sponsor. I was just another name on the BCC list. I didn't call my mother this time, I called my father. He picked up on the fourth ring. I could hear the television blaring in the background, some nature documentary he uses to tune out the world. Dad, did you see the invitation? I did, Zoe. Very nice, isn't it? Your sister is over the moon. My name isn't on it, Dad. I've put nearly $7,000 into this event in the last 48 hours. Why is Mom acting like I don't exist? I heard him sigh. It was that long, rattling sound that meant he was about to retreat. I could almost see him rubbing the back of his neck, looking at his feet. Don't ruin your sister's moment, Zoe, he said, his voice lowering as if he were afraid of being overheard. Your mother just doesn't want people thinking you're trying to upstage Chloe. You know how people gossip. If they see your name as the host, they'll start asking how you can afford it, and then they'll start talking about your struggles again. What struggles? I'm the only one in this family with a consistent six-figure income, Dad. I'm the one who stopped the sheriff from putting a lock on your front door. Zoe, please, we agreed not to talk about that. It's stay in the family business. Your mother has a vision for this day. Just be a team player, for once. For once, I hung up. I felt a sharp, cold snap inside my chest. It was the first real crack in the arrangement I had built my life around. I had been operating under the assumption that if I provided the security, they would provide the love. But they were taking the security and using it to buy a version of the family that didn't include me. I went to my desk and opened the file Elias had helped me with months ago. I looked at the property deed. My name, Zoe Miller, was the only name on the grantee line. I looked at the mortgage payoff confirmation, $88,900. I wasn't a team player. I was the owner of the stadium, and I was currently standing in the nosebleed sections while they played on the field. That was the night I stopped asking for permission to be part of the family. I realized that as long as I kept paying for the lie, they would never have to tell me the truth. The retaliation for my phone call wasn't loud. It didn't involve screaming or a dramatic confrontation. It was a series of quiet, surgical strikes designed to remind me exactly where I stood in the family food chain. On Monday morning, I woke up to a notification from the flower shop. My mother had placed an order for 3 massive, cascading peony towers for the entryway. The cost was $1,200. Because I was the one who had settled the initial catering deposit, the shop had my card on file. They processed the upgrade automatically. When I called my mother to ask why she'd authorized a 4-figure purchase on my credit card without asking, her voice was light, almost airy. "Oh, Zoe, we discussed this. Chloe mentioned how empty the foyer looked. You said you wanted to help, didn't you? Or was that just for show?" "I said I would cover the venue, Mom. I didn't give you a blank check." "Well, it's done now," she said, her tone sharpening. "And honestly, given how much stress you're putting Chloe through with your constant bean counting, it's the least you can do. She's carrying the first grandchild. You're just carrying a grudge." She hung up before I could respond. 2 hours later, a new PDF of the shower's final run of show appeared in the group chat. I scrolled down to the seating chart. My name had been moved. I was no longer at the family table with my parents and the other aunts. I had been reassigned to a small folding table near the kitchen door labeled Service and Support. My role had also been updated. Under my name in bold letters it said, Cake Distribution and Gift Logging. I wasn't a guest anymore. I was unpaid labor. I tried to ignore the sting. I told myself it was just a party. But then I got a text from my cousin, Sarah. "Hey Zoe, just wanted to check in. Aunt Martha told us you're having some really serious money problems, and that's why you've been so snappy lately. We're all so sorry you're struggling. Let us know if you need us to chip in for your meal at the shower." My mother was already poison-proofing the room. She was telling everyone I was a financial failure so that if I ever tried to tell the truth, that I was the one paying for everything, nobody would believe me. They'd just see it as the desperate lies of a jealous sister. The final blow came on Tuesday evening. I arrived home to find my father standing on my porch. He was leaning against the railing, looking at his watch. Next to him was a large, battered cardboard box. "Dad, what are you doing here?" He wouldn't look me in the eye. He nudged the box with the toe of his loafer. "Your mother is clearing out your old bedroom. She's turning it into the nursery for Chloe. She said you haven't lived there in years, so there's no point in keeping it as a shrine to your childhood." I opened the box. It was a mess of tangled ribbons, old school yearbooks, and my high school debate trophies. These were the only things I still had in that house, the house I had spent my life savings to save from the bank. "She's throwing me out of my own room?" I asked. "She's making space for the future, Zoe," he muttered. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. She asked for these back, too. She changed the locks this afternoon. Said she didn't want unnecessary foot traffic while the baby's room was being painted. He handed me the keys, the ones that no longer worked, and walked back to his car. He didn't offer a hug. He didn't ask how I was doing. He just drove away, leaving me on the porch with a box of my own history. I stood there in the dark, holding a plastic trophy for outstanding achievement. That was the moment I realized the deal was dead. I had paid the ransom, but they were never going to release me. I was being punished for the very thing that made me useful to them, my ability to provide. I took the box inside and set it on my kitchen table. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I was starting to feel something much sharper and much more dangerous. I was starting to feel like a landlord. I spent that night on the floor of my living room. The box my father had dropped off sat in the center of the rug like a headstone. I didn't unpack it. I just sat there, looking at the debris of a childhood I had spent 30 years trying to earn. Every trophy was a reminder of a time I thought doing better would make me one of them. I had won the debates, I had gotten the grades, and eventually I had made the money. I had saved their house. I had literally kept the roof over their heads, and in return, they had changed the locks and handed me a box of old paper and plastic. The realization was a cold, physical weight. I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was a utility. I was the emergency fund they didn't have to pay back. I was the silent partner in a business that specialized in my own exclusion. I looked at my bank account on my phone. The balance was lower than it had been in years because of the $88,900 payoff and the recent shower expenses. I had drained my own stability to maintain theirs. I had traded my safety for the hope of a seat at a table that was now being moved into the kitchen. The house, my house, was being repainted for a baby that would be taught I was the struggling aunt. My old room, where I had stayed up late studying for the career that now funded them, was being turned into a nursery. I was being erased in real time. I stood up and walked to my small office safe. I spun the dial, the clicks sounding loud in the quiet apartment. I pulled out the original property deed. I smoothed the paper out on the floor. Zoe Miller. There it was, the only truth left. My phone buzzed. I expected another demand for money or a condescending reminder about the cake. Instead, it was Elia's. "I'm just checking in," his voice was quiet over the speaker. "The weather's turning, you okay?" "They changed the locks, Elia's," I said. I was surprised my voice didn't shake. "My dad brought me a box of my old stuff. They're making a nursery in my room." There was a long silence. I could hear him shifting a chair on the other end. "Zoe," he said, "you're the landlord. You have been for months. You paid the debt. You hold the title. They aren't throwing you out of their house. They're trying to lock you out of your own property." "I know." "Then stop acting like a guest in your own life. You've hit the floor. The only way left is through them." I looked at the deed again. For the first time, I didn't see a burden. I saw leverage. "You're right," I said. "Good," Elias replied. "Get some sleep. We have work to do tomorrow." I didn't sleep much, but I stopped feeling small. The floor was hard, but it was solid. I knew exactly where I was now. The day of the baby shower arrived with a sky so blue it felt like a mockery. I drove to the family house, the house I technically owned, though the locks in my pocket were now useless, and parked 2 blocks away. I needed the walk to settle my nerves. As I approached the front gate, I could see the transformation. The peony towers I'd unintentionally funded were flanking the front door like floral sentries. Guests in pastel dresses were drifting across the lawn, holding glasses of sparkling cider. The air smelled like expensive perfume and the cedar mulch I had paid a landscaping crew to spread 3 months ago. I felt like a ghost walking through a movie set. The social spread was immediate. I stepped onto the porch and saw my Aunt Sarah talking to a group of neighbors. As soon as her eyes met mine, her smile didn't just fade, it curdled. She whispered something to the woman next to her, and they both shifted their bodies away from me, creating a physical wall of silk and linen. I walked into the living room, and the silence followed me like a shadow. It was a specific kind of quiet, the kind that happens when people have been told a tragedy is approaching and they don't want to catch it. "Zoe, you made it," Aunt Sarah said, stepping forward. Her voice had that high, vibrating pitch of forced sympathy. She reached out and patted my arm, a heavy, condescending touch that lingered too long. "We were so worried you wouldn't show. Your mother told us everything." "Everything?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "About your situation," she whispered, leaning in. She reached into her clutch and pressed a folded $50 bill into my palm. "We know things are tight. Take this. It's for your groceries or a nice meal. We're all praying you get back on your feet soon." I looked down at the $50. My mother had done a masterful job. She hadn't just sidelined me, she had pitied me. In this room of 41 people, I wasn't the woman who had saved this house from foreclosure. I was the cautionary tale. I was the bitter, broke twin who couldn't keep her life together while her sister flourished. "Sarah, I don't need." "SHH," Sarah interrupted, giving my arm one last squeeze. "There's no shame in failing, Zoe. The shame is in being too proud to accept help." Before I could hand the money back, my mother appeared. She looked radiant in a navy sheath dress, her hair blown out into perfect waves. She didn't greet me. She didn't look me in the eye. She simply stepped between me and Sarah, shoved a heavy silver tray of sliced lemon cake into my hands, and pointed toward the kitchen. "The guests are waiting for their refreshments, Zoe," my mother said, her voice loud enough for the surrounding circle to hear. "Since you couldn't contribute to the registry, the least you can do is help with the service. The kitchen is that way. Try not to drop anything." She turned her back on me to laugh at a joke Chloe's mother-in-law was telling. Chloe was sitting in a velvet armchair in the center of the room, surrounded by piles of gifts. She looked up at me, caught my eye for a split second, and then looked away, adjusted her maternity sash, and asked for more water. I stood there in the middle of the room I paid for, holding a tray of cake, while the people I had supported for a decade looked at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. I was the help. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I turned and walked into the kitchen, the swinging door hitting my shoulder as I passed through. I set the tray on the granite countertop, the one I'd helped pick out during the 2021 renovation, and gripped the edge of the sink until my knuckles turned white. The lie had been fully accepted. My mother hadn't just changed the locks on the doors, she had changed the locks on the truth. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. My hands were shaking, but my mind was suddenly, terrifyingly clear. I looked at the $50 bill sitting on the counter. That was the last cent I would ever take from them. I didn't stay in the kitchen to cry. I leaned my back against the refrigerator and felt the hum of the motor through my spine. Outside that door, they were celebrating a future that I was paying for while they treated me like the help. I pulled out my phone and texted Elias. "I can't do this anymore. They're telling everyone I'm broke. Mom just handed me $50 for groceries. She's using my house to humiliate me." Elias didn't text back right away. I watched the 3 dots dance on the screen, disappearing and reappearing. When the message finally landed, it wasn't just a hang in there or a heart emoji. "Check your email," he wrote. "I've been thinking about this since you told me they changed the locks. You saved them, Zoe. Now I'm going to help you stop." I opened my mail app. There was an attachment from Elias. He's a former paralegal, and he knows exactly how to make a document look terrifyingly official. It was a formal notice to vacate. It was properly formatted for our state, citing the property owner, me, and giving the tenants 30 days to leave the premises. I also attached the payoff receipt from the bank for $88,900 Elias sent in a follow-up text. "You're not just a landlord, you're the person who bought their peace. If they want to treat you like a stranger, give them the paperwork a stranger would give them. You have backup, Zoe. Use it. I stared at the PDF. It felt heavy in my hands, even though it was just pixels on a screen. For months, I had been the one holding everything together with silence. This was the opposite of silence. This was a scream on letterhead. A warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the kitchen's heat. It was the feeling of someone actually standing in my corner without asking for a check first. Elias wasn't my family, but he was the only person who saw the real me, not the shadow, not the wallet, but the woman who had worked 60 hours a week to protect people who didn't even like her. I believe in you, his last text read. Don't let them finish the cake before they know who really bought it. I downloaded the PDF and saved it to my phone's primary folder. Then, I did something that made my heart hammer against my ribs like a trapped bird. I opened the baby shower group chat, the one with all 41 guests, including the aunts who had whispered about me and the cousins who had offered me grocery money. I didn't hit send yet. I needed to wait for the right moment. I stood up straight and smoothed my dress. I picked up the silver tray of lemon cake. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I had backup. I had the truth. And I had a digital document that was about to turn this party into a courtroom. I pushed through the kitchen door and walked back into the dining room. The laughter was louder now. My mother was standing at the head of the table, raising a glass of sparkling cider. She looked like the queen of a kingdom I had built for her. To family, she announced, her voice ringing out over the room. And to the home that keeps us all safe. I caught Aunt Sarah's eye. She looked at me with that same pitying smile, then looked down at the cake tray in my hands. I just smiled back. It was the first real smile I'd had in years. I didn't just have a PDF on my phone. I had a confirmation of reality. I stood by the buffet table, watching my mother laugh with her sisters, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for her to look at me. I was watching her like a chess player watches a piece that's about to be removed from the board. I needed to be sure. Before I pulled the pin, I needed to know that the floor I was standing on was solid. I walked over to my father, who was nursing a glass of punch near the sliding glass doors. He looked tired. He always looked tired when my mother was in high gear. "Dad," I said softly, "I just want to be clear, you really changed the locks because Mom was worried about foot traffic." He looked into his cup, swiveling the red liquid around. "Your mother has a lot on her plate, Zoe. With the baby coming, she needs the house to be a sanctuary. You understand, you've always been the strong one. You don't need this place the way Chloe does. I paid $88,000 to save this sanctuary from the bank, Dad. Does that make me part of the sanctuary or just the person who pays for the walls?" He finally looked at me and his eyes were full of a desperate, pleading sort of pity. "Don't do this here. Not today. It's just money, Zoe. Family is what matters. You'll get it back in the end. It's all going to you and Chloe eventually anyway." In the end, that was the family motto. I was supposed to wait for the end of my life to be treated like I mattered in theirs. I walked away from him. I didn't need any more confirmation. The leverage was real. The deed was in my safe, the payoff was in my bank records, and the eviction notice was sitting in my sent folder, waiting for me to hit the final confirm on the group broadcast. I felt a strange, quiet calm settle over me. It wasn't anger anymore. Anger is hot and messy. This was cold. This was arithmetic. I looked around the room. I saw the crown molding I had paid to have repaired. I saw the hardwood floors I had paid to have refinished after the flood 3 years ago. I saw the 41 guests eating the lemon cake I had paid for in the house I owned, while they whispered about how unstable and broke I was. I pulled out my phone one last time. I opened my banking app and looked at the $88,900 transfer record. I took a screenshot. Then I opened the property deed scan. I took a screenshot of the grantee section with my name in bold, black ink. I attached both screenshots to the email with the eviction notice. The strategy was simple now. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to plead. I wasn't going to ask for my seat at the table. I was going to show them that the table, the chairs, and the very floor they were standing on belonged to the shadow sister. I checked my watch. The speeches were about to end. The VIP lunch was being set up in the dining room, the lunch I wasn't invited to. Everything was ready. My mother thought she was hosting a celebration of her family's success. She had no idea she was actually hosting the opening of a 30-day countdown to her moving day. I felt the phone's weight in my hand. It didn't feel like a device anymore. It felt like a gavel. The house felt like a stage where everyone was reciting lines from a play I'd already canceled. The main lunch was about to start. My mother was moving through the living room with practiced grace, directing the important guests toward the long mahogany table in the dining room. She had spent the last hour treating me like a ghost that occasionally carried a tray, and her confidence was at an all-time high. She stopped by the gift table, smoothing the ribbon on a massive box from Chloe's mother-in-law. "Everything is just perfect," she sighed, loud enough for Aunt Sarah to hear. "It's so important to have a stable home base when a new life is coming. I don't know what we'd do without this sanctuary." She actually squeezed my shoulder as she walked past, not out of affection, but to move me out of her way. "Zoe, dear, once everyone is seated, make sure the extra lemon bars are plated. And do try to smile. You look like you're at a funeral." I looked at her, really looked at her. She had no idea that she was currently standing in a house she didn't own, eating food she hadn't paid for, insulting the person who provided both. Her arrogance was a physical thing, a shield she used to keep reality at bay. I checked my phone. 1:14 p.m. In the dining room, the clinking of silverware began. The successful women were taking their seats. I saw Chloe settle into the head of the table, her face glowing with the satisfaction of being the undisputed center of the universe. My father was at the far end, staring at his reflection in a polished spoon. I saw my mother take her seat. She tapped a crystal glass with a spoon, the sharp ping cutting through the chatter. "If everyone could just give me a moment," she began, her voice warm and maternal. "We are so blessed to be here today. In this house, we've built a legacy of strength and family. And as Chloe prepares to bring the next generation into these walls, I want her to know that she will always have this foundation beneath her." Aunt Sarah wiped a stray tear. Chloe beamed. I stood in the doorway, my thumb hovering over the send button for the group chat. I had already pre-written the message. It contained the PDF of the 30-day notice to vacate and the 2 screenshots, the $88,900 bank transfer and the official property deed. My mother wasn't finished. "We've had our challenges," she said, casting a brief, pitying look in my direction. "But family stays together. We support each other, even when some of us struggle to find our way. That's what this home represents." She was using the very roof I bought to shade the lie she told about my life. I felt a strange sense of finality. I wasn't waiting for a miracle anymore. I wasn't waiting for her to realize she was wrong. I was just waiting for the clock to hit 1:20 p.m. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed a stack of small dessert plates. I didn't need to plate the lemon bars. I just needed something to hold so I wouldn't look like I was waiting for an explosion. I looked through the crack in the door. My mother was laughing, leaning over to whisper something to Chloe's mother-in-law. She looked completely, utterly safe. She thought she had won. She thought she had successfully turned me into the furniture. I looked at the clock. 1:20 p.m. I hit send. The room didn't explode immediately. It started with a ripple. One by one, the phones on the mahogany table began to buzz. It was a staggered, rhythmic sound, the digital heartbeat of a secret dying in public. Chloe was the first to look. She had been laughing at something her mother-in-law said, her hand resting on her stomach. She picked up her phone, her eyes scanning the screen. Her smile didn't just fade, it vanished. Her face went a strange, chalky white. Then Aunt Sarah's phone chimed. Then the cousins. Then my father's. The clinking of silverware died in a wave. It started at the head of the table and moved down, leaving a trail of absolute heavy silence. My mother was the last to notice. She was still mid-sentence, talking about the heritage of this house, when she realized no one was looking at her anymore. They were all looking at their laps. "What is it?" my mother asked, her voice tight with a sudden, sharp edge of nerves. "Is it a weather alert?" Nobody answered her. They were all reading the 3 pages I had sent. Page 1, the formal 30-day notice to vacate, listing Zoe Miller as the sole owner and Martha and David Miller as the tenants in default. Page 2, the screenshot of the $88,900 wire transfer from my personal savings to the bank to stop the foreclosure. Page 3, the property deed from the county recorder's office, showing my name and my name only. Aunt Sarah was the first to look up. She looked at the $50 bill she had pressed into my hand earlier, which I had placed on the corner of the buffet table. She looked at the bill, then at my mother, then at me. "Martha," Sarah said, her voice shaking, "you told us Zoe was a financial failure. You told us she was struggling and that you were supporting her." My mother's hand went to her throat. I don't know what you're talking about. Zoe is just being dramatic. She's probably sent some silly prank." "It's not a prank, Mom," Chloe said. Her voice was small and brittle. She held up her phone so my mother could see the deed. "It's a county document. She bought the house. She bought it 3 months ago. Why did you tell us she was broke?" "She didn't buy it," my mother shrieked, her poise finally snapping. She stood up so fast her chair screeched against the hardwood I had paid to refinish. "She just helped. It was a family effort. She's trying to upstage you, Chloe, just like I said. She's jealous of your pregnancy, so she's making up lies to ruin your shower. The wire transfer is for $88,000, Martha," Sarah interrupted, her voice gaining strength. She stood up too. "There are no other names on this payoff. You told me you and David had handled the bank issues with your retirement fund. You lied to me. You let me give her grocery money while she was paying your mortgage." The defecting started then. Sarah didn't just sit back down, she grabbed her purse. "I can't be here for this. This isn't a family lunch, it's a performance." "Sarah, sit down," my mother commanded, her face turning a blotchy, angry red. "Zoe, tell them it's a mistake. Tell them you're just the manager or something." I stepped out from the kitchen doorway. I wasn't holding a tray anymore. I was holding my own head high. "It's not a mistake, Mom," I said. My voice was calm, which seemed to scare her more than if I had been shouting. "I saved the house because I thought it would make me part of the family. I thought if I provided the safety, you'd provide the seat at the table. But today you told me I wasn't successful enough to sit with you. You told 41 people I was a failure in the house I bought for you. You ungrateful little." My mother lunged toward me, but my father finally stood up. He didn't look at the floor this time. He looked at the phone in his hand, then at his wife. "Martha, stop," he said quietly. "Stop. She's evicting us, David, in front of everyone." "She's telling the truth," my father said. He looked at me, and for the first time there was no pity in his eyes. There was only the realization that he had let the wrong daughter hold the umbrella. "We did change the locks. We did tell everyone she was struggling. We let her pay for everything, and then we treated her like a guest we didn't want." Chloe started to cry, real, messy tears that ruined her perfect makeup. "I didn't know, Zoe, I swear. Mom told me you were just. She said you were helping out with the chores because you couldn't afford a gift. I didn't know you paid for the house." "You didn't ask, Chloe," I said. "You just enjoyed the flowers." The room was in chaos. People were standing up, leaving their half-eaten plates of lemon cake. The successful women were whispering as they hurried toward the door, avoiding my mother's eyes. The facade hadn't just cracked, it had disintegrated. My mother tried one last time to regain control. She turned to the remaining guests, her voice high and desperate. "She can't do this. I'm her mother. You can't evict your own mother." "I'm not evicting my mother," I said, walking toward the front door. I'm evicting the people who live in my house and tell lies about the owner. You have 30 days. I suggest you start packing the nursery. It's a lot of work to move a legacy. I didn't wait for her response. I walked out the front door and down the porch steps. I heard the deadbolt click behind me, the lock that no longer mattered. By the time I reached my car, my phone was blowing up with messages. Apologies from aunts, panicked questions from cousins, and one text from Elias. How was the cake? I started the engine and pulled away from the curb. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw guests streaming out of the house, leaving the peonies and the gold foil invitations behind. The smirk was gone. The house was mine. And for the first time in 28 years, I was the one driving away. The following weeks were quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that follows a storm, thick, heavy, and full of the scent of turned earth. I didn't back down on the eviction. My mother tried everything. She sent me weeping voicemails about family values, followed by venomous texts calling me a cold-blooded traitor. She even tried to get my boss involved, calling the office to claim I was emotionally unstable and stealing from my own parents. But Elias handled the calls. He told her that any further harassment would result in a restraining order to match the eviction. They moved out on day 28. I didn't go to watch them pack. I didn't want to see the nursery furniture being loaded into a budget moving truck. Instead, I waited until the following Saturday to visit the house. Walking through the front door felt different. The peony towers were gone, leaving only a few dried petals caught in the floorboards. The house was empty, echoing in a way it never had when it was full of lies. I walked into my old bedroom, the room that was supposed to be the nursery. The walls were half-painted a soft, pale green. A single roller brush sat dried and crusty in a tray on the floor. They hadn't finished the job. They never did. My parents moved into a 2-bedroom rental on the edge of town. It's small, cramped, and the neighborhood is loud. My father still won't look at me, but he stopped looking at the floor, too. He mostly just stays inside. Chloe moved further away, closer to her husband's family. She sent me a short note saying she was sorry for how things went, but she hasn't invited me to meet the baby yet. I'm okay with that. A relationship built on an $88,900 debt isn't a relationship, it's a transaction. I sold the house 2 months later. I didn't want to live in a place where I'd been a ghost. I got my initial investment back, plus enough appreciation to put a massive down payment on a sleek, modern condo downtown. It has floor-to-ceiling windows and no family table. Just a breakfast bar where I sit with my coffee and watch the city move. Last night, I had Elias over for dinner. No silver trays, no lemon cake, no VIP seating. Just 2 people eating takeout on a balcony. You look different, Elias said, leaning against the railing. I feel lighter, I told him. I stopped carrying the umbrella. I looked out at the lights of the city. For 28 years, I thought my value was tied to what I could provide for people who refused to see me. I thought I could buy my way into a heart. I was wrong. But in losing that family, I finally found the person they were trying so hard to hide. I looked down at the empty street below. The house is gone. The debt is settled. The silence is finally mine. I watched the new owners of the old house pull into the driveway on my way out of the neighborhood for the last time. They were carrying boxes of books and a bright red rug. They looked happy. They looked like they were starting something real. I waved, and they waved back, not knowing I was the person who kept their roof from falling in. I'm glad someone is finally living in that house who isn't afraid of the truth. Would you have sent the eviction notice to all 41 guests, or handled it privately after the party? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to know if I went too far. If you're dealing with a family that only sees you as a bank account, check out the link in the description for another story about a husband who tried to secretly sell his wife's dog to pay off his gambling debt. You won't want to miss how she handled that reversal. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice when the world tries to keep you quiet.